Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
We are now going to introduce another concept, which is circulation. So, by definition, circulation is denoted by gamma, and we are going to define this as a line integral over a curve C v dot ds. So, the idea is we can take any curve C and there is a velocity field in this plane. So, this could be a 3-dimensional velocity field, and the curve could also be a 3-dimensional curve. And if I take a small element of it, an infinitesimal element, let me call it as ds, and of course, the velocity vector could be aligned at another angle. So, if I go around this curve and do this calculation, that is what is called circulation. By Stokes' theorem, I could relate this integral, the line integral on a curve, to an area integral, and I could write gamma as simply integral over an area A, and this would be the curl of the velocity dot dA. Okay. So, let me show you with a diagram what this curve is. So, if I draw the curve, so this was my curve C, and now I am enclosing it with an area. Okay, so this is some kind of a surface, and this, so you can imagine that this surface is capping this area, and what is being said is that I can take this little curved element here, which is dA, and it has a unit normal vector. So, whether I do an integral on this curve C or I do an area integral over this cap. So, I could think of a hat. Okay. So, I could place a hat on this curve and do the area integral on the periphery of that hat. Okay. So, that is what the Stokes theorem tells me. So, the surface A of the curl of velocity on this area A, which is actually the open surface that encloses C. Okay. All right. So, we have defined this circulation, and you have two ways of calculating it, either directly through the velocity field, or you can relate it to the curl, which of course we are denoting with vorticity, and these two are identical in 2 dimensions. If I take a very special case, then I could do the following. Gamma is over the curve C v dot ds, and this is actually equal to integral over the area A, which is omega z and times dA. Let me show this pictorially. So, if I took this curve C, and I broke it into these different elements. So, this entire area is A, and suppose I call each one of these as dA. Then either I could calculate gamma by doing a velocity integral over this curve C, or I could calculate the vorticity everywhere in this area, and then I would have these vorticity, and I just take the average of this, not the average, sorry, the summation of it, omega z dA. So, I just take the summation of all the vorticity enclosed by this curve, and that is your gamma. Okay, so, that is in 2 dimensions. So, in some sense what we are saying is that circulation is actually the sum of all the vorticity in the area enclosed by closed curve C. Okay. This should now help us interpret irrotational flows. So, if I have an irrotational flow, that means omega is 0 everywhere, right. So, this actually implies that my gamma is 0. So, if gamma is 0, then I have an irrotational flow. So, I have 2 ways of checking irrotationality. Either I could check omega is 0 everywhere, or I can simply check if gamma is 0 through the line integral. They are synonymous statements. And this brings us to an important theorem, which is the Kelvin's circulation theorem. So, Lord Kelvin he derived many important results, and one of them is particularly useful for us here, which says that in an inviscid flow with conservative body forces, the circulation around a closed curve moving with the fluid remains constant with time. So, what the Kelvin's theorem tells us is that if I have a flow and I decide on making a certain curve C, and that curve is going to obviously enclose certain fluid elements, but now I move this curve in time so that it encloses the same set of fluid elements at all times. So, essentially the curve convex with the flow, okay, it encloses exactly the same elements at all times. Then he says that the material rate of change is 0, which means d gamma dt is 0. So, this is Kelvin's theorem. It's a very important result. Let us look at the operating conditions. If I have an inviscid flow, and of course I am only using gravity, only accounting for gravity as the body force, which is a conservative force. So, this holds for inviscid flows. In an inviscid flow, if my flow is initially irrotational, it will remain irrotational at all times. If it has a certain gamma to begin with at t equal to 0, it will retain the same gamma at all times. So, it is a very important result. It is somehow related to the conservation of angular momentum. Okay. So, so the fallout of this is that, so maybe I should summarize that here. So, this implies that flows, of course we are talking about inviscid flows. So, maybe I should clarify that inviscid flows that are irrotational at t equal to 0 remain irrotational at all t. Okay. So, let us understand what we have said so far. So, we started off with a flow at large Reynolds number and we broke it into an inner flow and an outer flow. The outer flows we have assumed it is to be inviscid, okay, viscous effects are negligible. So, they are governed by the Euler equations, but Euler equations are still complicated for us. Okay. So, we are asking ourselves, suppose the flow is irrotational, then can we have a simpler analysis? Okay. But for the flow to be irrotational, what are the conditions we should satisfy? And we have seen we should have, of course, omega is 0 at all locations, and we also saw it is synonymous with gamma equal to 0, the circulation being 0. And the Kelvin's theorem tells us that it is enough to have irrotational at one time instant, and you should be then able to generalize that it would be irrotational forever. Okay. So, we will now talk about a concept which is the velocity potential. So, let us consider a curve. So, this is the curve C, and let us say there are these points on it A, B, C and D. Now, I have an irrotational flow and therefore, I can say the circulation calculated on this curve C is 0. So, gamma is defined as the circulation on this curve C, the closed curve, V dot ds, this is 0. Now, the curve C, as you can see, is in this manner A, B, C, D, A. So, I just have to go around it. What I will do is, I will decompose this integral into two parts, which is from A through C. So, I will write this as, so now it is not a closed curve. So, it is an integral A, B, C V dot ds and then integral over C d A V dot, this is 0. Essentially, the sum of these two integrals is 0, or in other words, this integral is negative of this integral. So, I will rewrite it as integral over A B C V dot ds. This is integral over V dot ds, and instead of putting a negative sign here, I am going to reverse the direction. So, instead of going from C D A, I will now go A D C. Okay. So, what I am now saying is that because the circulation is 0, so I am reinterpreting this whole thing as, let me fix any 2 points A and C, and I can take any arbitrary curve that goes through these 2 points A and C. And what I am now able to show you is that this V dot ds is independent of the curve that I choose. Okay, so, what this result shows is that integral V dot ds between A and C is path independent. And the argument is because C is arbitrary. So, maybe I just write it down, C is arbitrary. So, now this leads to certain mathematical deductions, which means that V dot ds, the integral between A to C, I should be able to write it, if it is path independent, as some value that depends on C and some value that depends on A. Okay, because this is path independent, it only depends on the states A and C. So, therefore, I should be able to say this quantity is the difference between the two states. And this implies that this V dot ds is a total differential. Okay, so, this therefore implies that V dot ds is a total differential, and this must be d phi. And this would imply that V is actually gradient of phi. Okay. So, what we have shown is that if I have an irrotational flow, and the irrotationality, let me recall for you, was that each element is not spinning about its individual axis. Okay, the rate of rotation is 0, and that we were able to relate to circulation. So, for circulation being 0, we are now able to show that this implies velocity can be expressed as a gradient of a scalar function. This phi is known as velocity potential. Okay, simply because V is the gradient of this function phi, and flows which have a potential, which means the velocity potential, are called potential flows. So, if somebody asks you what is a potential flow, essentially a flow that is inviscid, it is irrotational, is known as a potential flow. Okay. All right. The fallout of this is that, as I said earlier, that instead of V being a vector with 3 unknowns, you have reduced the problem to a single unknown, which is a scalar. So, we will continue on this in the next session, and before we close today, I just want to remind you of another concept, which is the stream function. This would also be very useful. So, please recall a streamline. we had talked about a streamline a few sessions earlier, and we said that along a streamline, if I take any point and draw a tangent on it, then the tangent points in the direction of velocity vector. Okay, so if I draw a streamline, then tangent at every point gives me the direction of the velocity. So this would be a streamline, this would be another streamline, and this could be another streamline. So these are all streamlines, and as a corollary, flow cannot cross streamlines. So if I take two sets of streamlines, they form a stream tube. If I took a set of streamlines and formed a surface in 3 dimension, then I could get a stream surface, okay? And if it is closed, it is a stream tube, but it need not be closed and it would still form a stream surface. Okay. Now, the way we defined a streamline, we had done this in earlier session. If ds is a vector along the streamline and v is the velocity vector, then along the streamline ds cross v is necessarily 0, and therefore we were able to say that if I do I j k dx dy dz, this is vx, vy, vz, this is 0, and this would give me the equation for a streamline. So the equation of a streamline would be that vz dy minus vy dz is 0. For the j equation, I get vz dx minus vx dz is 0, and for the k direction I get vy dx minus vx dy is 0. So these three equations represent a streamline. If I restrict myself to 2 dimensions, then this is the relevant equation, and it tells us that dy by dx, that means the slope of a streamline is essentially given as vy by vx. Okay. So this can be used to find an equation of a streamline. We can actually define a stream function. Such that, so this stream function is psi, and it is x, y, and t in 2D, in 2 dimensions. And here I could say that psi equal to c is a streamline. Okay. And if I just drew different streamlines, this could be psi equal to c1, psi equal to c2, psi equal to c3. So these are 3 different streamlines that I have drawn, and one can show that the difference between these constants would give me the flow rate. So if I did c2 minus c1, that would give me the flow rate between 2 streamlines. Okay. So in 2D, one can show that I can relate Vx and Vy to the stream function, and I am just giving you the definition. So Vx is given as del psi by del y, and Vy is del psi by del x. Okay. In 3D, psi is no longer a scalar, but a vector. Okay, so let me review what I have shown you. If you had an inviscid flow, then it is possible to further check if the flow is irrotational, and if it is inviscid and irrotational, you can define what is called the velocity potential. And velocity potential simply is a scalar, the gradient of which will give us the velocity field. Okay? But we can also talk about a stream function, and here we are saying that we have not invoked anything about rotationality. A stream function would exist for all kinds of flows. However, if we restrict ourselves to 2 dimensions, then we can define a stream function psi and get the velocity field Vx and Vy by taking simply the spatial derivatives of this stream function. So now we have these 2 variables, psi and phi, the stream function and the velocity potential, and we will go back to the Euler equations which actually govern the flow for an inviscid fluid, and see that if further our flow is irrotational, how do these concepts of stream function and the velocity potential simplify our governing equation. We will do that in the next section. Thank you very much.